Assalamu alaikum, my name is Hannah, this is Pepper and Pine. Welcome to day 18 of Qur'an Journaling. Today I am covering Ayat 23, 24, 25, and 26 of Surah Kahf. Here's a brief look at my Qur'an journal so far. I've done illustrations as well as some reflections. I'm using my Ibn Kathir Tafsir, which is really nice to have a book version of the Tafsir, but I also am listening to some online Tafsir lectures. I also have my word-for-word Qur'an. This has been incredibly useful. It has the Qur'an in English and in Arabic, and the best part, it has the word-for-word translation, as well as all of the tashkil marks for correct pronunciation. One of my favorite resources has been my Qur'an notebook. Each notebook comes with 3 juz, with the Arabic on one side and the English on the other side. And the best part, it has some blank space so that you can write your notes. I have included my own pieces of paper taped in to add more space for notes. I love this notebook so much. I intend to get the rest of the series. There are 10 in all. So the first thing that I do is I make some notes in my Qur'an notebook, and this is the first process of what I have found to work with this Qur'an journaling experience. At first, I'll listen to a lecture and I'll read the Tafsir Ibn Kathir. And once I've collected my thoughts, I'll write them into my Qur'an notebook, which is a great place for me to collect all of my ideas, my thoughts, my reflections, and the Tafsir. And that way, when I get ready to do my Qur'an journal with my illustrations, I refer back to my Qur'an notebook, which has all of my notes. I've had to include a lot of extra pages because once I get writing, I end up having a lot of notes. And this has been a nice place to collect all of those ideas, even though I am also writing in my Tafsir book in the margins and around the edges. And if you are not a fan of writing in books, then I recommend that you use some post-its or just tape in a piece of paper or just have a separate notebook. But I personally don't mind writing in my books. However, I am not as willing to write in my Qur'an, and so I like having this Qur'an notebook, which is fabulous because then there's spaces for you to write, and I will include on occasion the word-for-word translation right in the page that has the Arabic Qur'an, and that way I can increase, hopefully, my retention of the Arabic words, which it is my goal to not just know the translation, but also to know the word for word. So this is a long-term goal that every step of the way, each time I learn something more, it makes it that much easier to pull those words out and have a relationship with the Qur'an when I'm listening to it being read aloud, especially during the month of Ramadan when we're listening to the Qur'an so much more. I'm referring to my Ibn Kathir Tafsir book, but I'm also listening to some lectures, and there are some differences of opinion regarding ayah number 23 and 24. The English translation of these ayahs are, "And never say of anything, I shall do such and such a thing tomorrow, except with the saying, if Allah will, and remember your Lord when you forget, and say, it may be that my Lord guides me unto a nearer way of truth than this." So in some opinions, it says that this ayah was revealed when the Prophet ﷺ was speaking with the Quraysh who had previously gone to the Yahud of Yathrib to ask about the prophet and prophets of the book. And the Yahud had said to ask 3 things, and we had referred to this earlier on in the surah. But they said to ask about the ruh, about the people of the cave, and about Dhul Qarnayn. When the Prophet ﷺ received them, he ﷺ said, I'll tell you tomorrow. This is one opinion, one hadith. And when he didn't say, InshaAllah, Allah SWT did not reveal the surah, 2 surahs actually, for several days, weeks, even several weeks. There are some differences in how long it took before that revelation came, whereas the revelation had been very regular up until that point, and the Prophet ﷺ was expecting it the following day, and that's why he said, come back tomorrow, when it actually took 2 weeks and in some cases 40 days. Now, there is a difference of opinion regarding this hadith because one narrator within that chain is absent. It's missing basically one narrator. And Imam Razi says that because there isn't that narrator, that this becomes a weak hadith, and then to not to refer to it as this being a consequence, but these ayahs still reflect the adab and the etiquette and what we should do. And if we do forget to say InshaAllah, that we do say it because we're saying it unto Allah, or rather we're saying it to Allah rather than to the person you're speaking to. So if you're telling someone, I'll see you tomorrow, I forgot to say InshaAllah, you don't need to say, back to them, call them back up, I forgot to say InshaAllah. You say InshaAllah when you remember, because InshaAllah is something that you're saying between you and your Lord. So I'm going to pause and I'll read you the next two ayahs, the translation, in a moment, but I want to share with you what I've decided to draw for today, because I did take 4 ayahs together, and there's one illustration, and the illustration is actually very important for two themes that are in these passages. And the first is about, don't say you'll do something tomorrow without saying InshaAllah. So I wanted to draw day and night to really show that you don't not say InshaAllah, like you don't omit it. You have to say it for something that you're going to do in the future. So I'm doing day and night. And I actually really don't like the way I did the setting sun, or rather the sun with, blending into night. I wanted day and night to really show day and night. And because I had the sun right in the middle of the sky, and I sort of did the rays of the sun emanating outwards in a circular pattern, I just continued with that. And I didn't like it right away. And instead of just stopping and figuring out how to fix it, I continue and I continue and I continue. And you will watch this process pretty much get worse, in my opinion, get worse and worse and worse. And I end up changing the entire thing in the end. And I'm going to show you how to fix something, whether it's a mistake or it's something that you just don't like. I'm using a blender here because I thought I could blend the colors together a little bit better, and you see me going over it, and it makes it look really beautiful, but you can still really see those harsh lines, and you could maybe interpret them as time periods throughout the day, but I really don't like it. And then I continue, and I'm going to add the gray for the mountains, and then just a little gray border, and then I try to erase it and kind of blend it again, and it really doesn't work. So I'm taking a spare sheet of paper in the same type of paper, so this is still drawing paper, and I am just going to trim it off a little bit with my fingers just to give it a rough edge, and then I'm going to tape it onto that top portion. And this is a quick fix, and once it's done you can hardly tell, and I really like the way that it ends up when I fix it. And this is a choice that you have to make as an artist if you want to do something like this, or if it's just good enough for you. I really didn't like it. I wanted to fix it. So when I do this again, I end up drawing, again, the same night and day, but I end up drawing the night first. And the night takes up much more of the drawing. And I actually really like the way that this turned out, because it's a lot more reflective of the ayah that's going to come next. So in ayah number 25, the translation reads, "And they stayed in their cave 300 solar years, and add 9 for lunar years." And so the words solar and lunar, they are in parentheses. And at first, in some translations, you might just see that they stayed 309 years, or they stayed 300 plus 9 years. And actually, the tafsir on this is much more deep and reflective of the way that people measure time and the way that we should measure time. We take some of this story's history from the Christians, and the Christians measure time by solar years. And in their references, the time period that the sleepers of the cave were in the cave, it differs from like 100 years to the max of like 200 plus years. But the Muslims take their time by the lunar calendar, and this is both for months and years. And the Jews take both the solar and the lunar for the months and the solar for the years. And so I found that to be a very interesting reflection on timekeeping. And the last ayah, number 26, says, "Say, Allah knows best how long they stayed. With him is the knowledge of the unseen, of the heavens and the earth. How clearly he sees and hears everything. They have no wali, helper, disposer of affairs, protector, other than him, and he makes none to share in his decision and his rule." But in the Tafsir, it talks about the way that the sleepers of the cave, when they were resurrected, the king came to them. The argument about whether the soul is resurrected, only the soul, or the soul and the body, both are resurrected. When the sleepers of the cave were resurrected, that argument was laid to rest because then it became clear. And then there was an argument that followed, how to honor them, how, do we build this structure or a masjid over them? And what ended up happening was that these sleepers of the cave, they believed in Allah alone. And yet their story and their presence later on was one of them being saints. And the Christians take their saints as protectors or intercessors between themselves and God. And so they themselves ended up, without, of course, their consent or their knowledge, they ended up becoming saints for the Christians and protectors. And so this ayah specifically also says that they have no wali, there is no protector or disposer of affairs other than Allah. So I really appreciate that clarity in that ayah as well. So here's a closer look at the drawing for today. You can't even tell that it has been fixed with a piece of paper over it. I encourage you to try that out. If you ever make a mistake, you don't need to rip out the entire page. I hope that you're enjoying this series, and if you are Qur'an journaling along with me, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your work. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. There's more information as well as links to all of the materials that I'm using in addition to the photographs for each of these entries. If you'd like to see how we're Qur'an journaling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.